Hi, it's Matt Bisogno here, and it's Thursday evening, wishing my life away. Thursday the 2nd of May, about 8:30. And as promised, this is the first in what will be a series of videos showcasing various aspects of the Geegeez Gold toolkit. So here we are on the race cards menu page, and I've got it set to tomorrow's date, Friday the 3rd. What I'm going to do is I just want to look at a couple of sprint handicaps. So I'm going to use my filters here. Now, if you can't see these when you're looking at the cards menu, it's almost certainly because this link that says show filters here has not been clicked. Clicking that will do that. And I can choose various things from here. I'm going to change the distance to be 5 furlongs to 7 furlongs, and you might have noticed that I've now got a subset of races here. I'm going to select handicaps only, and then I've got a smaller subset again, and I want ideally I want 10 or more runners. And now I've got a a very manageable subset. So I've got one at Lingfield, one at Chepstow, one at Musselburgh, one at Dundalk, and one at Newcastle. I'm just going to look at a couple of these races. I'm going to start with this race at Lingfield. Now note that Lingfield tomorrow is a turf meeting, not an all-weather meeting, and it's kind of important when you're starting to look at a race. Before you start to look at a race, if you're not experienced and familiar with the course layouts as well as the going, now I've checked the going already, and it is good to firm tomorrow. It's expected to stay that way, but I just wanted to show you the layout of the 7 furlong track at Lingfield on the turf, because it's different from the all-weather track. So the all-weather track goes around the turn. Now, where are we? Here we are. The all-weather track goes follows the loop around here, in the middle. But as you can see from this beautiful verdant strip here, the turf track has a straight course for races up to 7.5 furlongs. Now this is a 7 furlong race that we're going to look at here. So you can also see, I hope, that it's kind of downhill for the first 3 furlongs and then levels out. It's very flat, the last part. So it's kind of an easy 7, if you like, but it's a straight 7, and that's important. So keep that in mind as we go back to Geegeez. Now, the first thing that I would do after that, particularly in sprint races, is I'd ask if there is a draw bias. And at Lingfield on the turf track, on the straight turf 7, and actually at the shorter distances as well, there is a draw bias. There's it used to be referred to as a golden highway close to the stands rail. And that in this case is the high numbers. So as you can see, I set this up with going good to firm to good to firm. Runners tend to, let's just make that 10 to no, it's fine as it is, 10 to 13. I always look at the actual draw, so that just takes out the non-runners. Slightly different from the card draw, where each horse is considered to have run from the stall that it's advertised in the paper. So, for example, if a horse has got stall 3 in the paper, the card draw is 3. But if stalls 1 and 2 were both non-runners, then its actual draw, it would be closest to the rail, so its actual draw would be 1 if the 2 inside it were non-runners. So that's the difference between card and actual, and I hope that makes sense. I've also selected handicap races only. This is a handicap, and obviously such races are generally more competitive than novice or maiden races, and as such it's better to look, if you're looking for any kind of bias, be it pace or draw or anything else, it's better to use handicap data, because in theory the horses have been weighted to be more closely matched. Right, all of which verbosity leads us to this picture here, and we can see that this is on win percent, and we can see it in the table above as well, that low and middle, the win percent is approximately 5.5%, whereas high numbers have fared a good bit better. This is the constituent draw breakdown, and you can see that the lowest two stalls have done okay actually, but if you look at the place data, which is a kind of a bigger data set, you can see that sort of the middle to the high draws have done better. I like to use IV3, this new metric that we are using. Now that is just an average of the stall in question and the stall either side of it. So these are the IV values for, that's impact values for stalls 1, 2 and 3, and adding those three together gives you 2.61, because there's 0 for this one. So this stall 2, is an average, is the sum of these three, the stall itself and either side, divided by 1, 2, 3. So 2.61 divided by 3 is 0.87. You can either know that or take my word for it, and the same is true as with all of them. In the case of the highest and lowest stalls, we obviously can't add the value for stall 0 because there isn't one, so we add the 1 and 2 stalls to give us the IV3 value there, and likewise for the highest stall we add these two to give us the value here. Right, so what does that mean? Well, in this case we can see that although we have this little peak for the 1 and 2 boxes, the majority of the beneficial action from a draw perspective is in the high numbers. And I'm going to focus my attention on these numbers, kind of. So this is the one, which is sort of standard. The one line is this grey line along here, and we can see that from stall 9, here's 8 and here's 10. So from stall 9 to the outside is an area to focus on. That looks a beneficial area generally. So that's the first thing to say, is that I'm going to look at high draws here. The second thing to look at is whether there's a pace bias, and let's just look at the pace tab first. At the top of the pace tab you've got these coloured blobs, and they essentially demonstrate the historical performance of different run styles. So for example, horses which led in this context, so 7 furlong races, handicap races, with between 10 and 13 runners on good to firm ground, horses which led have won 3 of the 26 races they've contested, and that could be that they led or they shared the lead, and that has an impact value of 1.41, which is nicely above 1, which means it's a positive factor. Unfortunately, it's not profitable in or of itself. Backing horses which led, those 3 winners would have given you a loss of £7, so we've got -7 there. Again, with prominent runners, we've got 6 from 56. Impact value is 1.31. That's a positive factor, and backing those would have yielded a profit of £9 at SP. Conversely, looking at the held up cohort, just 3 winners from 87 handicappers that were held up over 7 furlongs here, a desperately low strike rate, an impact value of 0.42, which is very low, and a cash hemorrhage in comparative terms. So we're kind of looking for a horse that is either kind of leading or prominent, I think, ideally, and probably one that's drawn high. So we can look at the data or graphic view here. If we look at the graphic view, we can see where the pace is likely to be, and we can go further by sorting the field on draw like this. So now we can see, let's have a look, we've got draw 1 is Azora High here, and interestingly there's a 5-to-1 chance in stall 2, which might just be drawn away from the action. Difficult to say. We've got 2 drawn in 9 and 11 that like to get on with it. Sometimes I like to check on the data view, and we just look at the numbers. We can see that this stall 1 horse with Sylvester de Souza riding as well, that's a plus. He is led in his last 3 races. The stall 3 horse, Indian Sounds, has been a prominent racer most of all, but made all this time. And then down at the other end we've got Sheila's Showcase, who went right and bumped rival leading stall, so basically fluffed the start last time, and on its previous 3 occasions it led. So I imagine that will try to lead again. And then in stall 11 we've got Almarabe, Kirby riding, and that led last time, and it was prominent the time before, led the time before that, and was in a prominent position the time before that. So again, I'm expecting I'm expecting the 1 horse to be quick, and I'm expecting the 9 and 11 horses to be quick. And I think that, you know, I might be wrong about this. It's 5-to-1 the field, so you kind of you've got to have an in, or you have to pass the race. My in here is that I'm expecting the higher numbers to be where most of the pace is, and also I know that all other things being equal, it's advantaged in terms of the lie of the land, if you like. So I'm looking for a forward running, either a leader or a prominent horse, which is drawn high, and that clearly on the graphic view leads me most likely, in the most likely case, to well, I mean, I can include this prominent guy here as well, to numbers 2 Nuboff, I don't know how you pronounce that, 4 Sheila's Showcase, and 3 Almarabe, so 2, 3, 4. The next thing I want to do is look at Instant Expert, and I can sort this by draw. I'm going to do it that way, but it doesn't really matter which way I do it, because as you can see there are a lot of grey zeros, which essentially means that a horse has not raced under a given criterion before. So for example, Almarabe has never run on good to firm ground in a handicap in the last 2 years, and given that he's a 3-year-old, that means in his career. I just want to try and get a bit more, although I'm going to lose some of the specificity by doing this, I just want to try and get a bit more data into the visual. So I'm going to select all races instead of just handicaps, and now we can see that some of the runners have have won under one or more of today's conditions. I'm going to put this on the place view as well, again with the objective of getting more data into the viewport. Now I could change this to include all codes, so all weather racing as well, like that, but that's probably a little bit misleading because this is a turf race. So I'll settle for flat, and I'll use these criterion, and I'm going to sort it by draw. So the horses I was interested in were the high drawn horses. Let's just say this quartet here, numbers 2, 3, 4, 5. And we can see that Nuboff was placed in both starts over 7 furlongs. And if I click on this little block here, the 200 block, I can see those 2 runs. And we can see he was placed in a novice race at Leicester, and then in a maiden race at Doncaster. Just touched off. In actual fact, he won the Leicester race. That's interesting. Won the Leicester race, finished first, but was disqualified and placed second. So we know that the trip is fine for him. Looking at the ground, good to soft. there is a question mark about the good to firm ground, especially going down the hill. Some horses won't let themselves down. They won't put pressure on their front legs going down a hill on fast ground, basically because it's uncomfortable for them. So that would be a reservation about Newboff. Now, Sheila's Showcase has had 3 runs on good to firm and been out of the frame in all 3. So let's have a look at that. The first of those was in a 6 furlong maiden at Salisbury, but the horse was only beaten 1.5 lengths there, finished third, only 7 runners. Went third close home. So in actual fact, if that had been 7 furlongs, notwithstanding that it was its debut, it probably would have made the frame. Anyway, I certainly wouldn't be concerned about the ground on the basis of that run. The other 2 runs were an Ascot novice race, which is probably quite a warm race, and as you can see from 34 subsequent runners out of that race, there's a 26% win rate, so that looks like it was a really hot race actually. Let's just have a quick look at that. You can see that the second one, the fourth one twice, the fifth one twice, the sixth one, there's Sheila's, and then the 8th one, the 9th one, even the this was the winner, but it was disqualified. So you can see that loads of winners came out of that race. So it was a good race, and it was only beaten 4 lengths. And then the Newmarket ran in a handicap over at Newmarket over 6 furlongs, a Class 2 handicap. So again, a good race on good to firm, and here was beaten 3 lengths. Never enough pace to threaten the leaders, it says at the bottom there. And that was after fluffing the start as well. So this is why this actually very well highlights the value of this inline content, and also the reason that you need to be a little bit careful when seeing 0 from 3 and thinking, well, that horse has no chance. Instant Expert works best in exposed form handicaps, and we'll come on to one of those in a minute, where you'll see the value of it. But in these races where, I mean, even in this one, I've had to put it on place, and rather than using handicap only form, I've gone to all races to get more data into the picture. So I'm already diluting the value of Instant Expert to some degree. I would not be discounting Sheila's Showcase on the basis of the ground, because that horse has run 3 very decent races, arguably in better races. Certainly his most recent, or her most recent 2 races, and has not been beaten far, even having fluffed the start and over what might be an inadequate trip last time. So I'm actually pretty interested in Sheila at 7-1. Almarabe, there isn't much to go on. He's had 2 runs in bigger fields, and again run reasonably well, not been beaten far. Goodwood, undulating track. Yeah, I mean, that was a Class 2 maiden at the glorious meeting, the Qatar Festival as it is now, Qatar if you prefer. The other one was round the bend at Catterick, and that would have been a very different experience. So again, I wouldn't be rushing to write that horse off on the basis of the 0 for 2 field figure there. Indian Sounds has got some form in Class 4 1A Class 4 novice race before running on soft ground at Chester over 7. Now Chester's obviously a very tight bend there, and soft ground as well, so that's it was heavily eased, or eased at least, late in the race there. That's a very different proposition from today's race. The stall 3 would be my reservation with that one. So where were we sorting it like this, weren't we? So we had Almarabe, Buckingham, Sheila's Showcase, and Newbow. Yeah, so I think I just want to have a quick look at El Maraib, and we can see that he ran in that Catterick race as well. Did we look at him already? Yeah, he would be of interest as well. I mean, 7 furlongs here in a Class 3 maiden, a good maiden, beaten 3 lengths in a 12-runner field. Straight track at Newmarket, good to firm. So quite a similar sort of test. They'd be the 2 of interest to me anyway. Now, what I just want to do quickly is I want to look at in 3-year-old handicaps, and I have to say that if you gave me a race type to discard from the racing calendar, it would probably be 3-year-old handicaps, because I find them very difficult. Now, in fairness, this one, most of the horses are a bit more exposed than your average 3-year-old handicap here. They've all got, you know, a number of runs on which to make judgments, whereas often you get horses like this Wiretap, who's had 3 runs and is making a handicap debut. So what I like to do is, in the land of the blind and all that, I like to look at trainer form. And if you click on any of the icons in the header bar, in this case I'm going to click on trainer form, then it opens up the trainer form for all of the runners in the race. Now that's quite a lot of data, of course, but what it enables us to do is I'm not looking at everything in that window. I'm looking for a couple of things. I'm looking for, if you look at the win and each way profit and loss, you'll see that it's majoritively red, and that's as it has to be, otherwise bookmakers would go skint and the game would be up. So that's fine. But what I'm looking for lines of black, and in this case we can see that Mark Johnston's record at the track in the last year is impressive. Now that's going to include all weather form as well. So that's one of the things I'm looking for. The other thing I'm looking for is in this, you can see this kind of 2 heading lines. I'm looking at the second block, the trainer snippets. And I want to, there are a few things I can do here. I'm looking at the bottom of that block for things, contextual things today, like for example, Indian Sounds hasn't run for 200 days, and what is Johnston's record off a 60+ day layoff? Well, about 15%, which compares with his overall record of 14%, well 15.75% in all races and 14% in handicaps. So it's reasonably similar. It compares, it certainly doesn't compare unfavourably. And I can quickly skim through and see that, for instance, Charlie Hills is in a bit of form at the moment. Saeed Bin Saror has a good 5-year record, 30% hit rate at the track. And what else can we say? Nothing much else of interest. This David Simcock first start in a handicap. How does he get on when he puts his horses in handicaps the first time? Well, he's had 69 handicap debutants in the last 2 years. 6 of them have won. And against market expectations, he's got 0.51 for actual over expected, which is really low. And he's, of course, the horse can win, but the history of these 69 horses tells us that they're generally sent off much shorter than they ought to be. And so, notwithstanding that he can win, any horse can win, they're generally poor value propositions based on the trainer's ability to get a horse ready to win first time in a handicap. So that's quite a useful insight, and what you can see there is that we're not always looking for positive indicators. We can be looking for negative ones as well, and that's certainly a negative indicator about the well-fancied Wiretap, who may well go a favourite and will probably win now, but hopefully you can take the nutritional point that I'm now labouring. Sir Busker's interesting. You can see that this is William Knight's second start in a handicap. only 3 from 25, but that's a 12% strike rate. Another 3 placed, so that's 1 in 4 of his handicap second timers hits the board. And they do it at prices. There's £25, 25 points profit. AE is favourable. Impact value is favourable, so he wins with his second time handicap starters more often than average in his peer group. And this one's a 10-to-1 shot, ridden by the just about peerless James Doyle. But conversely, you'd be extremely brave to overlook this 1 from 56 record off a 60+ day layoff. Now again, it doesn't mean he can't win. One of the 56 did win, but 55 of them didn't, and I'd be a little apprehensive about that, let's say. And so we can go through here now. I'm only interested in these high drawn ones, so what I can actually do is I can sort it by the draw, and I can just look at the ones I want to look at. So Saib bin Saror, we can see he's in good form at the moment. He's got a very good record at the track longer term. Kirby rides Lingfield, particularly the all-weather strip, in fairness, very, very well. Be interesting to see what their partnership together is. Just 1 from 7 when they team up. Not fantastic, but not terrible either. He's definitely on my ticket, is Al Murray, but I'm interested in him. The layoff, the 180-day layoff isn't a problem with bin Saror. You can see he's got a 22.5% strike rate off a layoff, and that compares with his overall figures of 21%, so slightly above, but in real terms just the same, so it's not a material factor. The other one to look at was Sheila's Showcase. Now here we've got a case of second start in a handicap, 0 from 14. That's pretty unremarkable, but it's also quite a relatively small sample size. I would be a little bit concerned about the strike rate, none from 8. Again, it's a small sample size, but the trainer's not obviously in form. If we just click on Dennis Coakley, and then we can have a look. Could have actually just gone to the full form there and done it that way. And we can see that the run, the first time in a handicap that he had, that was when he fluffed the start and actually ran pretty well. Should be straighter for that run. I don't want to ignore that factor because the data are there, but he's got, this horse is advantaged by his run style and by his track position, and because of that, I'm going to I want him on my ticket as well. Charles Hill's New Boff. He's a difficult one to weigh up. I think he probably needs to be in the picture as well. This 8 from 91 second time in a handicap is not brilliant, and you can see that AE means they're sent off shorter than they perhaps ought to be. I think with him, he can, he's another one. I mean, this is a race full of horses that have some sort of chance. With him, the price would put me off in the context of this second time in a handicap. The 0.63 AE is pretty low. So where I end up with after much waffling is based on track position, based on form, based on scope to step forward. I'd probably be splitting my stake between Al Muraib and Sheila's Showcase, dropping 2 classes as well. Is quite interesting. You can see there from the arrow. So that's that Lingfield race. Now I've talked a lot longer than I intended to on that, so I'm going to be very brief, at least for me, in terms of this Newcastle race. This is a 6 furlong 10 runner class 5 handicap. Again, you need to familiarise yourself with course constitution. If you don't know, Newcastle has a straight mile track on the all-weather, so this race is a straight 6 furlongs, and that puts a slightly greater demand on stamina than at other tracks. It is also the only all-weather 6 furlong track in Britain and Ireland, in fairness. So course and distance form is material, because a 6 furlong winner at Wolverhampton or Kempton or Lingfield will have won that race around a turn, whereas here they have to settle and they have to travel for a longer period and they have to get home. And plenty of horses that come here with winning form from other tracks fail to do that as a result of the different course constitution. So that's a general point which is really worth considering. Before we look at the instant expert, let's look at the draw and the pace again. We've got standard because it's a going is standard. Runners 9 to 12, we can make that 11. We can make it nice and snug because there's plenty of data to work with. We've got actual and handicap here, and we can see that the win percent is higher for the high drawn horses, actually profitable to follow. Again, looking at the IV3, we see that that essentially this is teased out. We can see here that the one line, which is standard or par, is in the middle of the chart, and we can see that stalls 8 and above fare above par. So I'm going to focus on the higher drawn horses again. If we look at this heat map, tries to overlay draw thirds, low, middle and high, with run style, and we can see that those horses that led, drawn either low or high, have done pretty well, as represented by the dark green block. Conversely, those that were drawn low and raced mid-division or held up have done less well. Again, we can sort it by place. It gives a kind of a mixed message, if you like, but on balance, we're probably looking towards the high numbers and either led or held up. That's going to depend on the pace in the race. So if there's a lot of early pace, it's probably going to favour a hold-up horse, and if there's not a lot of early pace, then something on the front can give it a right good go and maybe get home. So here we are on the pace tab, and what I've just said is essentially reflected in the blobs at the top here. We can see that led and held up are the favourable run styles. And if we look at the grid, which I've just sorted by draw from 1 to 10, remember I want to focus on the high numbers, what we can see is that the pace in the race is high. It's in stalls 7 and 10. Go On Buster is the most likely leader. So if we look at the data view, we can see that Go On Buster essentially always leads. Made All, led, Made All, quickly away and clear. So this thing gets out and tries to stay out. Looking at the field, there's nothing in the low numbers that's going to challenge him, and probably only Indian Pursuit chase leaders, led 1 furlong, then track leaders, race towards standside prominent, led for 3 furlongs, then track new leader. Go and Buster is going to lead in this race, and if you're a trader, that might be all you need to know. You could back him now and lay him in running, and get your profit if that's your kind of thing. Not really my kind of thing, I must admit, but I accept and acknowledge and respect those who do like to do that. Anyway, so I'm looking. There are only 2 things that I think are likely to happen in this race. One of them is that Go and Buster gets an uncontested lead and just wins, and the other one is that Go and Buster gets taken on by Indian Pursuit and does a bit too much, and something else in the top half of the draw comes through and wins. Now what's interesting is that Everkilaki is the second favourite, 3-1 second favourite, and it's drawn right on the other side, and doesn't really have a lot of pace. It did race prominently last time, so it will be really interesting to see how they ride that horse, whether they drop him in, try and get a midfield position, so he's drawn over here, but they might just try to get him into the middle of the pack, hope these go off too hard and he can finish. That's a lot of prayer mat stuff for a 3-1 shot. So again, obviously the horse can win, but I'd probably be wanting to take him on for that reason. Now, if we look at the Instant Expert, this is a much better example race because there's loads of data. This is sorted on all-weather handicaps, place only. I just put it on win actually, and you can see that our mate Go On Buster has won twice at the track. And if we look at his overall form, we can see that his 2 wins, or his most recent 2 runs here, the latter of them 6 furlongs off 68, £5 higher here, but won easily, made all, kept on unchallenged, and that was 2 days ago. So he's obviously in great form, gets a £5 or £6 penalty here and tries to do it again. His previous run at the track, he finished 3rd, beaten a length. He looks bomb-proof to run his race. Of the others on track form, now the 2 that we wanted to look at were Indian Pursuit, whose record in Class 5 is not great. Record at 6 furlongs is not great. Yeah, I'm not really interested in Indian Pursuit. The other one's Ever Kilaki. If I just do that, and we can see that Ever Kilaki is less exposed against the conditions. You can see he's run 4 times on the all-weather. He's only run once in the grade, once at the track, 3 times at the distance, 4 times in this sort of field size, whereas the others have got some bigger numbers. So he can improve. He's just got this big track location impediment to overcome. That's going to be difficult for him. So that's the reason I'm kind of against him. But you know, he won a 14 runner. That was over 5 furlongs. It's interesting. The extra furlong is perceived to be in his favour. Probably is. But if we look at his 6 furlong form, we can see he has won around a turn at Wolverhampton and was beaten twice before that. He's off the same mark, 58, as when he won around that turn. But this is you know, he'd be a very interesting horse to watch, particularly stepping up from a fast 5. He won here over 5, and he's kind of stretching out here to the straight 6. Again, you know, he's the second favourite in the race. He can very well win, but I think I'm with the market here. I think Go On Buster is going to take a good bit of beating, and looks, you know, very likely to run his race again. So that's I've waffled for quite a long time in the end. That wasn't my intention, but I did want to highlight the value of using the draw and pace data to kind of shortlist a subset of the runners, a section of the runners, if you like. Now, obviously, you're not always going to get it right. In fact, you know, it's sensible to practice doing this, to either bet on the basis of what you interpret for small stakes, or for, you know, to paper trade. You don't have to get stuck in the first time you do it, and you probably shouldn't do that. I'm not your mum or your dad, and so I'm not going to provide such financial advice, but I think on balance over time, if you start to understand how these pace maps work, and if you start to understand the course constitution and where the draw biases are, if there are some, now very often there aren't, don't try to infer something that isn't there. You'll develop your understanding and your interpretation skills, and you'll have a massive edge, because a horse like Ever Kilaki, which is absolutely certain to win now, you know, you'll be able to see what the kind of the mountain it has to climb, compared with Go On Buster, who's drawn on the right side, probably gets an easy lead, gets the rail if it wants it, regardless, you know, and is well favoured by the setup. So you'll be able to see those things and understand the value edge that gives you. Okay, this has been the first of these. I will obviously endeavour to keep them shorter in future as we hit the 40-minute mark. Thank you very much if you've stuck with me this far, and I hope you found some value in this little recording. Matt Bisogno saying bye for now.